What's up, you guys? This is Bart coming to you from TST Industries in Florida. I have a new episode of TST Garage for you. Right here behind me is a new member of the MT line from Yamaha. It's the 03 version. It's basically like an R3, but a little bit more upright, a little bit more comfortable, slightly different ergonomics, and naked. We just bought this thing. We're gonna be doing a cool project where we'll build it into a hooligan street bike or something similar. We don't know yet, but hopefully you guys will follow our videos and get to experience what we build along with us. Anyway, today, the objective of the episode is to ditch this shovel. That's usually the first thing that people do when they buy a bike. Here in front of me, you see our Undertail closeout that closes out the hole left behind when you ditch the fender. This is a ABS injection molded part that is meant to fill the gap, but in a way that looks like Yamaha made it. It really just completes all the lines from front to aft on the bike and even matches texture and color so that when you look at it from underneath after the fender has been taken off, it looks like the entire Undertail is smooth and everybody's happy. This is just a closeout. It is available on its own if you already have some homemade way of holding your license plate, but right now we're just talking about the Fender Eliminator. So the Elite 1 version of the Fender Eliminator exists in two different variants. We have the standard and adjustable. The standard comes with a stainless steel black powder coated bracket and all the hardware necessary to mount it to your Undertail and then mount this to the bike. The Elite 1 adjustable is a little bit nicer. It really looks the deal. It's made of billet aluminum that's been CNC machined, anodized, has our logo in it, brushed finish before anodizing, all stainless steel hardware. It looks really sharp and also enables you to have an adjustment point where you can vary the angle of your license plate hanging, and that just allows you to further modify the bike to your liking. The installation on this bike is, I can't even say similar. It's exactly the same as on both of the generations of the R3. We decided to make this video because we just want to start wrenching on this bike, and I hope you enjoy that. And if you have this bike, I hope you will come and get our parts. If you're looking around, if you're not sure about our parts, we've actually put together a video where we stacked up 3 other brands of Fender Eliminators against ours and tried to do a very objective job of just comparing the technologies and all the different aspects of all those parts so that you can make your choice in an intelligent way. And if you choose somebody else's, then I hope you at least appreciate that we helped you make that choice. Once you ditch the fender, you're actually getting rid of your mounting points for your signals. So if you want to retain these signals that come from the factory, they're actually pretty nice. They're LED. We do have a bracket that goes in between your Undertail cover and whichever license plate bracket that you chose with your kit, and enables you to fit Yamaha specific signals on with this kit. If that is not your flavor, if you want to check out some of our signal offerings, we do have our Echo signals, our ARO18s, our BL6. They do really alter the rear aesthetic of this bike. They're really nice, really bright. I hope you check them out. If you're into integrated taillights, then I can tell you that we are the provider of the most popular taillight in the world for these bikes. So I hope you'll give that a shot, tstindustries.com, or even YouTube videos. We have all that stuff, imagery, videos, information. We have a blog post about it. Check it out. So I've talked a lot. I'm really amped because I want to show you how easy it is to install this. One more thing I got to get through with words, and then we'll start wrenching. We do sell all of our components in modules, kind of a la carte. So those guys that don't want to run a license plate light don't have to pay for it. For those of you guys that do want to buy a license plate light, we do have a very nice, stealthy, low profile license plate light that goes behind your license plate, in between the bracket and the plate itself, and really almost disappears behind the license plate, but provides really ample lighting with 4 really bright LEDs. I will show you how to wire that up and how to mount it with this system. That's pretty much it. All I really needed to say. Now I want to pick up some tools and get going. Okay, now just before we jump onto the bike and start stripping all the components off of it, we'll need to pre-configure the selected adjustable Fender Eliminator onto the Undertail so that it's ready to go on. I will not show you this simple guy. It's way simple. You just grab the screws and nuts from here and attach it to the Undertail. We actually do have that documented in one of our R3 videos concerning the Fender Eliminator installation. So if you really want to see the detailed steps, please see that video. So grab that, put it to the side, and talk a little bit about what parts you get in this kit. This comes in a bag by itself. This comes in a bag by itself, all in one box. So these are all the fasteners that are necessary to get this, once it's built, installed on the base here, and then subsequently spacers and screws to get this screwed in from the inside of the trunk to the outside right into these bosses. So for now, we will put this aside here and just talk about this kit. Now I've laid it out in a very intuitive way here because this is how we are going to pre-configure it. I'm going to take the installation hardware out, present it to you. We have some countersunk M5 screws. We have 12mm long M6 screws, a couple nuts, and washers. These washers go with these screws. These screws go through these holes into this assembly, and the nuts cap them from the other side. Now, I want to point out that if you lay these brackets out on the table and they're configured in this way, they're actually self-supporting up. This is the correct configuration for what we're going to be doing. And then draw your attention to this component. We call it the hinge. There is a straight side and there is a curved side. The curved side will go towards the rear of the vehicle and it will receive these L brackets in this fashion on the outside from how I've configured them. So we can go ahead and get one of the washers on the surface here and get a screw started into that thread. Now, one detail I want to talk about here is that these brackets have a screw large enough to fit over a little protrusion, a little boss that sticks out of the surface here, and that actually centers the assembly, so that when you screw it together, it's actually really a hinge. Now, on this connection, we highly recommend, so that in the future from the vibration during road use, this doesn't fall off, we recommend using medium strength thread locking compound. I'm using a Loctite thread locker blue 242. Then I'm going to use a 4mm Allen key to thread this in. Just bottom it out, making sure that the hole of the L bracket engages that boss protrusion, and this doesn't have to be tight. So I'll have this side configured, same thing on this side. And at this point, I will ask you to stop and make sure that your pre-assembled components look like this. For this side of the bracket system, you have the curved part of the hinge on the same side as your bracket, your L bracket, and your L bracket is sloping up and back. Mirror image on this side, and once you get to here, it's very simple. The countersunk screw goes through the middle hole, through the slot in this bracket, and get that capped with one of these flanged nuts. These actually don't need thread locking compound. They are nylock type locking nuts. For this fastener pair, we're going to use an 8mm, either box or open-ended, or if you want to use a ratchet, that's cool. You will need a 8mm socket for that. Now here, as you can see, I've tightened it up just a little bit too much. I'm going to leave some play so that we have adjustability. That looks good, not too much slop, but still enough play so that we have give when we go over to our main base. All right, this is pretty much ready to go. I have this hinge just a little bit too tight. Doesn't have enough movement in it. Okay, so I'm gonna grab our Undertail cover, and from its hardware kit, we're gonna take these 16mm long M6 screws and 2 washers. Those go on this side with the ribs into these 2 holes. Now, here's the skinny on this part. It is ABS plastic. Regular store-bought thread lockers do off-gas some sort of a chemical that ends up causing ABS to crack, especially if the ABS is left in cold temperatures and it's getting a lot of these fumes from the thread locker. So we will forego that on these connections, and we will rely on the preload on this plastic created by the pressure when we tighten these down. And that, in my experience during my installations, was always enough to keep this together and not let it fall off. You do have some plasticity and spring force in the ABS plastic, so once you preload those screw threads, they actually hold with a lot of friction. We should be good to go there. We'll line these guys up. Thread them in by hand. For these screws, we will also be using a 4mm Allen. Now here, I'm not going to tighten them down all the way to lockdown, but I am going to make them fairly tight. And now we need to examine how these are positioned. We want the surfaces in the middle here. We want the vertical surfaces to be parallel to the center plane of the bike. So we will need to hold these in place while we tighten them down to the Undertail closeout. I like to use an 11mm open-ended wrench on these, on the actual hinges, and then tighten them down. The wrench keeps it in position while I tighten down and prevents it from rotating. And then we have nice hinge action. If you've actually rotated off axis a little bit, you could use the wrench to change that position just a little bit. Just be mindful not to loosen the screw connection while you're doing that. Okay, we're good to go here. Now I'm just gonna put it in some sort of a logical position here, meaning on the rotating axis. Tighten down just a little bit so I don't have a sloppy assembly to work with. We will finalize the actual hanging angle once we get this on the bike, and also get a license plate on it when we're actually able to model on the bike how everything's fitting together. One additional thing I want to talk about here, there is a center hole and it does have centering rings. This is for the purpose of running a license plate light, or if you're running signals through this, you will need to make a larger hole, and that will enable you to get all sorts of wires into the inside of the bike from the outside. As you can see, we do not provide these Undertails with a pre-made hole. This is simple enough to drill, and we found that most people don't want to convolute their system with multiple holes if they're not running stuff through them. So that is why we chose not to provide it with a hole. For the purpose of running my license plate wire through there, I will be using a 3/16 inch standard bit. I have my drilling substrate here so I don't go into the metal of my table. It's very, very simple. There is a centering ring in there. I take my drill and I just work it by hand so that it gets a nice bite into the plastic and creates a burr. and then I drill it very, very slowly till it penetrates. Quick tip, if you drill too fast, you melt the plastic and you end up with a big burr on the other side. If you drill slow, it'll be easier to clean. All right, that's nice and neat, and it'll enable me to pass my wire through. That will be done a little bit later. Right now we're pretty much ready to go disassemble the bike and then throw this thing on, and I'll show you just how great it looks when we replace the fender with our Fender Eliminator. In the first step, we will remove our actual license plate and retain the hardware. If you guys need replacement hardware, we have these reflective guys, and we also have these really nice anodized aluminum stainless steel pairs. Check those out on our website. Next, we will remove the passenger seat, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, second step here will consist of removing this panel. 2 fasteners hold that to the bike. Use a 4mm Allen, back those out. And we will pry away on this plastic, releasing this. Same thing on the other side. And we'll tab this out, up and towards the rear of the bike. Switch tools to an 8mm socket. Remove these 2 fasteners. And now our seat can come out. Here we have this trunk panel that is held in these 2 push fasteners. We'll reset the centers in. You just push the center straight in, and that unlocks this thing. I like to set them back to this state where the button is popped out. That makes them ready for reinstallation later. And then this comes out. Now let's find the cable systems that come out of the lighting that is on your fender, and that you can see here coming out of this sub tray hole. We'll need to trace it to where it is connected into the harness. Some of this stuff runs under the starter relay, so we'll pull up on the starter relay. It has this nice rubber mounting system and enables us to get to all that stuff easily. See this white plug? That is one of your signals that will need to be removed. It does have a button here that you press down on and withdraw it. The next one is this. It's a black version of the same plug, same method. And then we have your license plate light wire. It is deep under there. Here it is. So this one has a button here that you press down, makes a snap, and you withdraw it. And now we have all of these cables loose, so we'll snake them back to the trunk compartment here. So that plug goes under the ECU. I don't want to just pull by force. I'll pull up on the ECU, same kind of a mounting system as the relay. Let's get this back here. Also get the white one out. And now we have all of the fender lighting equipment wire in my hand, ready to go. I'm just gonna replace my ECU. All right, and the relay I'll just leave for now because we'll be working in here still. So now with this loose, all the wires out of the way here. I'm just gonna shove these in the corners so we have access to the 4 nuts that are the hardware that secures the fender onto the subtray and also onto this frame component. I'll switch over to a 10mm socket on my impact here, and we will take those out. So when I go to remove the last fastener, I like to support my fender so it doesn't just drop off. And I will handle these wires and feed them in through the hole as all of this drops away. And now the fender's off, and we can proceed with the installation of our new TST Industries system. So the next step actually involves the installation of our pre-configured Fender Eliminator setup into the bike with this part from underneath and hardware sets from the top. We're using tri-lobular plastic cutting screws so that when you insert them in the bosses and start screwing down, they form their own threads and they actually lock in place so that vibrations during road use will not remove this thing from the bike. I've actually employed a method when I'm working by myself that makes this very simple. You only have two hands, and if you don't have a helper, you need to pre-stage this stuff somehow. Here's the spacer that goes on the inside of the bike. It does have an arrow on it. We insert the screw. The arrow goes towards the front of the bike, and I like to pre-stage these things here. That way, I don't have to move back and forth and have something hold the undertail on the bike. I have everything pre-staged, ready to go. Okay, so we'll grab our configuration here. There really is only one way to insert this. So you can see the shape closely matches the shape of the hole in the undertail. And just line it up like that, hop up top, get the pre-staged hardware, and start engaging it with the screw bosses. And the name of the game here is just to get the threads engaged, and you won't be able to get too many turns of that screw in without a tool. We just want to hang that whole undertail and Fender Eliminator system without the possibility of it falling off. Now for the next step, we'll need a slotted and also Phillips screwdriver. I like to use the really long guys, and you'll see why in just a moment. I'm going to support my undertail from the bottom as I get these guys closer to bottom out. And I want to make sure that you leave a little bit of adjustability so don't get them all the way to the bottom. Here is where the slotted screwdriver comes in. We have a nice slot here that enables us to adjust where that arrow is pointing on each one of these spacers. Like I said, I'm going to have it pointing towards the front of the bike, parallel to the center plane of the bike. So we hold it in place and tighten down all the way on these screws. Now remember, you are cutting the threads as you go in, and they are plastic bosses. We've engineered this in a pretty sophisticated way, but there is still the possibility that you can snap it. So you really want to be very careful. Make sure you don't over tighten this thing. All right, and that's pretty good. But as you can see, we have nothing to plug in to all those connections that we've removed all this equipment from. For the purpose of this video, we are not doing signals, because the next video that we're going to shoot is going to be about replacing the OEM taillight with our TST Industries programmable and sequential taillight. So if you guys are interested in all those signal options that I've outlined in the intro to this video, we actually do have a separate video that shows you installation of all the different signals that we have, or signal types and methods of holding them on the bike and means of connection. All that is captured in our part 2 video from the first generation R3 that we did the Fender Eliminator install on. This video will be linked here in this video for your convenience. In case you do want to go for the taillight, we'll have a video posted shortly here about how to install our integrated taillight on this bike. I do want a license plate light on this setup, so I will use one of our low profile license plate lights here. It does come with a rather long wire that is excessive, but some guys will find that it's easier just to loop it once it's in here. In a minute, I'll show you how to route it through, get it in position. Up here, what we'll do is get at this wire here. I'll show you exactly which one. You saw me in an earlier step removing the license plate light wiring pair from here. This is where we will be connecting to. And the means of connection is going to be these little posi tabs. I really love these because they're toolless and they really are universal. So let's get those guys prepped here while we're in this compartment. You can see here, it's the larger diameter here. You unscrew this, it does have a split in it. We will get that around the wire that we're trying to connect into and get this other part turned in. Tighten it down, don't go too crazy, you don't want to clamp too hard around the wire. There's a little element in here that pierces the wire in a very, very minute way. And that is what makes the connection for us. On the other wire, I'm just going to stagger a little bit because I don't want to bulk up my connectors in one area. So I'm going to go just offset by a little bit here. Now we are prepped here. I did lose this cap off this side before. I'll just leave them intact here. Again, don't tighten too much. But now this is ready to go. When we route the wire through, it's going to come out from this slot here, and we'll just run it through here, either loop it or shorten it. I'm just going to loop it for this installation. We'll connect right into here. Okay, in the pre-configuration stage on the table, we put this thing together and it was close, but now what I want to do is make sure that everything's center, level, and when I start working with my license plate light and my license plate, everything's already finalized so that when I cover these components, I can rest assured that everything's really, really nicely put together. So I will center it, make sure that it's hanging level, tighten it down into those locking nuts, and now I'm happy with it. So I was just in a previous step talking about our license plate light. If you are wiring this in, you would have to make that hole I showed you how to make, and then the wiring for the license plate light routes over the main bracket like so, and this rests here. Our license plate goes into a channel that's been designed into this light assembly, and it gets held down like this. You center it, you level it, and that's good to go. Now, we do have high bond adhesive here. If you choose to use it, peel back on the red masking, and that exposes very, very, very high tack adhesive that sticks to your license plate and won't let go. I typically just use the springiness of this adhesive to create friction between my license plates and the license plate brackets, and that holds it in place and never goes anywhere. So really, choice is up to you. We included the adhesive for those guys that get worried about losing stuff, but like I've shown in my installations, it's not entirely necessary. So at this point, I'm just gonna go ahead, put my hardware in, get everything held in place. Once again here, before tightening down all the way, I am gonna establish level and centeredness. Make sure I have enough gap between my license plate light and the undertail. If not, you could loosen up the hinge and move stuff around. I think I'm center. Yep. Tighten down all the way. And now it's just a matter of routing this into the bike and connecting it. So here, before I insert, I'm going to pre-curve the wire so it's easier for it to be routed through the inside. Get that in our drilled hole. And now I'm going to use a set of needle nose to catch that from the top in the slot I showed you guys before. And here's our wire. We get it fed in, making sure that it's not snagging here. It's been folded for a while in the packaging, so you want to make sure that you feed it in and then stop just before you get too much tightness. There we go. This is the slot where I fished out the wire when I fed it in through the bottom. The routing is really up to you. What I like to do is go over to the side, hook under all these looms so that it stays low and on the bottom of everything. Just like that. Through here, I will feed it under the relay, under all this stuff. So we'll keep it out of our way. That looks good. Replace the relay. Like that. And now we have these caps here in our pre-configured connectors that we need to take off. They're on the smaller end. Be careful not to drop them. This particular connector's in the brown wire. That will take the red wire from our light. Get it fed through from the non-threaded side to the threaded side. And just thread it in. Once that's threaded down, give it a little tug, not too much. Make sure that that connection is actually captive and move over to the other side. So it goes black wire to black wire. Once again, a little tug, power up the bike, make sure everything is working, and it is. Now we will just get all this stuff wrapped up here. You could either use a wire tie or something like that. I will just get this wire wrapped up and under some other connectors and devices, and that'll hold it for me. At some point I will go through the bike and tie all this stuff together. There we go, nice and neat. Now we can proceed to the reinstallation of all the parts in the reverse order of disassembly. Like I mentioned, we're going to do signaling equipment later, so I'm leaving this disconnected. It'll ease my process later on. All the steps from this point forward will just be as if you were rewinding or watching in reverse what I did earlier. So there's a little panel here. I typically just leave this out. It gives me more trunk space, but things can fall forward here. So this is really up to you what you do with it. I just like a larger trunk. All right, the very, very last step now. If you like the angle of your license plate, go ahead and lock it down with a 4mm Allen. If not, loosen it up a little bit and take this opportunity to get that angle to your liking. Obviously this doesn't do much for you. Somewhere in this range. Be mindful of how much load you're going to be carrying on the back of the bike. If you're going to be compressing the suspension a lot, chances of bottoming out here will increase the chance of your license plate being damaged if it's just straight up and down. So I typically like mine on this angle here, kind of like I had it before. Make sure that during this tightening you hold this whole setup so you're not putting strain on the plastic panel. Tighten it down. We do have Loctite in there, so we should be good to go. I have a minimum gap here between my license plate light and the sub tray. It won't be rubbing, won't cause any damage. Good to go. License plate light works. That's good to go. And that's pretty much it. We've sort of become known as the House of R3 in the last couple of years since we did the R3 Superbike show, the racing program surrounding the R3s, when we had the Super Sport and the Superbike machine. We've done so many parts for these bikes that when this MT-03 launched, we just had to come out with like 2 or 3 accessory parts to tie all this stuff together, and instantly we had a whole catalog of parts for you guys to enjoy. If you want to see what we've got to offer, we have integrated tail lights, really awesome signals, Meg GTR signals for the front. We'll be doing a video of that soon. This Fender Eliminator, controls, crash protection parts, a whole big catalog. Like I said, check out tstindustries.com. You'll have access to more information, photos of this stuff installed on the different bikes we have. I think you'll enjoy. tstindustries.com. See you there. Ride safe.